Alright, in this video I'm going to be talking about sketching fabric and costumes and soft goods. In my opinion, fabric has two main components to understand. One is understanding how the fabric folds, and this could be because of the gravity's effect on the material, of it pinching and layering fabric result as a movement of the underlying structure behind it or the person wearing it. And the other thing to understand is the basic underlying structure that the fabric covers, whether this is a body, a bed, or a bag. And the last thing to consider would be the lighting, a little separate from the form, but it helps to make that form show very clearly. Before I go too much into lighting, right in this, what we see me doing so far is just doing some quick little exercises of some basic ways to think about fabric, from that flat cloth all the way on the left side of the image here to then the wavy cloth, and I'm drawing the contour lines to show how that shape changes. Then to that next little draped cloth next to it, where you have those little pinch corners where the fabric sort of pulls into those folds, and then even that little twist where the fabric sort of rolls over on itself, which will be important for the lighting demonstration later. And now to these sleeve and cloth samples, just to get a little test to see what it looks like. I think these are very valuable exercises to go through. I don't jump whole cloth into the whole sketching of like a fabric or a soft good. Start off by trying little experiments, little sections. We can see me adding little cross sections here, right, to understand how the form is moving, right? Say when it is pinched in the corner, like when you bend your elbow, and then stretched across the backside there. Real quick, that was a little recording error on my part that I wasn't able to capture that little video. That's why we had that jump cut. But now we're going from the soft goods to the fabric demo. The soft goods is the main point of this video. I have another one on that. But we can see again with this costume that I'm sketching of Snow White from the movie Mirror Mirror by Aiko Ishioka. I am just doing the basic forms at first. Again, really want to emphasize doing those basic forms of whatever it is you're sketching at first. So now I'm jumping into doing the lighting, and there's a couple things to understand with lighting on, say, soft goods. When we have things that roll, right, so soft transitions like that wavy cloth, we have gradients. But then when we have sections that cover other sections and cause shadows, we'll have sharp edges to those shadows. So again, when a form transitions from facing the light to away from the light, that's a roll, and that is a soft transition that we might have there. But when a form covers or blocks the light of another form, we get a hard shadow, which we are about to get in this twist demonstration, with the light kind of coming from the top right of the page. And that's what I'm doing for most of these, is imagining the light coming out of there directly from the top, or a little bit 45 degrees to the right, for a simple consistent lighting scenario on most of these. Alright, so in this I've slowed down the video on the twist example here to regular speed, because I think it's really important to see what's happening here, right? So I'm filling in the marker in that space for the shadow of where the fabric has sort of twisted over on itself and is casting a shadow on itself. And because it's casting a shadow, that shadow has sharp, clean edges. With a physical marker, it's pretty easy to keep the edge fairly sharp and clean. Digitally, I think we're going to see me just do a little erase here. There it goes. And I'm also going to do a little masking on this. I don't think it's necessary to mask when it's physical. You could definitely do this just by being a little sensitive with the pencil. But digitally, it's still a pretty imprecise tool, the physical pencil, the control we have over it. So I am masking it off to take advantage of that tool in the digital. So there's a little marching ant lines for that mask. And now I'm going to go in there and add white pencil over it. And what that does is we have the sharp contrast, right, of that crisp shadow edge with a light that would be peeking over it, causing that shadow to be cast on that surface, which really gives it a strong sense of dimension in this. And then I have all those contour lines on the back side of the form there, and I'm going to go in and add a little highlight core at the edge there. There it goes, right, with the light coming from the top right of the page here. That's how we get that. So again, that really gets a lot of pop very quickly because of that sharp contrast between a cast shadow and a transitional or a rolling shadow or a rolling surface. And now I'm just duplicating the same thing over here in all of these and trying to focus the light on towards one side of any of these sketches here. We even see in like this sort of pleated fabric, right? We have little highlights there with these two soft good bags, right? One is super simple, one has a bit more of the texture and the folds inside of it. So the super simple one, right, I kept it pretty big and blocky, but with this one, right, I start to get a little more specific on the bag, like little things like the shadow being cast from the top of the bag, blocking out the highlights hitting it. Okay, now we're back to 1 times speed again on this costume in a very simple form at first, and I'm focusing the highlights on where the light core is hitting it and rolling away. And we'll also see me again sort of erase out to get a crisp edge where the surface and the object layering above it is going to cause that light to have a sharp shadow across it, and it's going to give us some nice contrast on these little arm sleeves, these puffy arm sleeves right here. And here's the erasing marker, and that little crisp shadow does a lot to help it read as this 3D form with a shadow casting over it. I'm going to come back over that with some marker, and that's going to reinforce that lighting. But again, with just doing that with the pencil, really quickly we get some indication of the value on there. And then just going for some quick contrast, like a 50% here for the marker on the page. And that would finish off, that first sort of demo page of just sampling different elements of hatching, of fabric and soft goods. All right, so this is Snow White from Mirror Mirror, the costume designed by Aiko Ishioka. And so front view, back view, images I found online. Focus here on the arm, right? Focusing on big forms at first, right? We see me sketching the sort of cone shape for those arm puffs before going in to sketch the little pleats inside of them, right? And that keeps it in matching perspective. Now I'm adding line work. Now I started by sketching the entire costume, but now when I'm adding my line work, I'm focusing on one little section at first, this arm. And the reason I'm focusing on this section first is that it allows me to kind of understand what's going on in detail in there. And hopefully by spending this time right now in depth with this, later on when I sketch the entire costume, it's going to give me a stronger sense and understanding of what's going on in this little arm puff, and that way I can sketch it quicker, faster, and maybe even simpler in the full costume sketch. But right now, again, spending lots of time with the little wrinkles in there, right? I have this sort of overall structure in the marker, but I have like this little detail in the pen, right? I am using the reference of the images in front of me as reference, not as like exact copy, because I'm just trying to understand what's going on. So sometimes changing it up a little bit can help me understand. Right, here's this little pattern of like this almost like shoe lace stitching on the arm there, this big bow on the back. Again, sometimes you even see me adding contour lines on some of the forms. Sometimes the contour lines are already there, represented as seams on the outfit, and that's helpful to get two sort of elements of information with one little piece of effort there. And this is this little section on her front area there that it was like too much to actually try and sketch on the costume itself, so I did a little side separate detail to help myself out. And so now we're going to go in and highlight on the arm to do some lighting. So just like I practiced earlier in the video, light either coming kind of from the top kind of from the top. In this instance, maybe a little bit from the left of the screen here. So anything that's kind of facing that light directly is going to get the brightest light. Again, generally, roughly using the reference images for, well, exactly that reference, but not to copy it, right? I want to sort of interpret what's going on there. Focus on the light first, get some nice strong highlights, and then I'll go in there with some shadows afterwards. Again, I'm focusing on those, like these areas that I think are the brightest areas first, so that way when I put more pencil down away from them, it allows me to slowly build up that light, but make sure that I know where my focus is first. I can also just get a little bit of that crisp edge. I would get some folds represented even by the light. And taking my time, right? This is 2 minutes, whereas of the entire video that I'm doing right now, just on this little section, the entire sketching that I've represented here, from those very first exercises to this costume and the highlights, is about 2 hours of sketching, all of it condensed down into 10 minutes. So again, this just gives you a sense of how patiently I'm working with this in terms of making sure the lighting is correct, and then we'll just speed it up so that you can see me kind of go through the entire process for everything. Again, a little bit of what I'm doing here after I get these strong highlight areas is trying to get a little gradients out of there as I get just a little roll in some areas, but then not too much. Again, really focusing on trying to keep my lighting in one area to draw attention to that area over any others on the sketch. And we'll see that happen to the bow right next to this arm detail, where I just put the highlights on the bow of the dress over the rest of it, because like on the back side, the bow is the most interesting part of that dress. And here we go in terms of speeding it up again, which means there's about a minute left of this video, right? So some quick marker there for some increasing the contrast between light and dark. And then even going back a little highlight for some texture detail there, and really using my reference to get these highlights on the bow, definitely putting into that, like where rolling forms have gradients and cast shadow forms have super sharp edges into effect in that bow there, adding some thicker line weight to help pop that out from the section behind it, planning to just add thicker line weight on this, what was essentially the first sketch on the page, but just I'm lowering the contrast on that by only doing line weight and not as much highlights or hatching on it. And that's about it. I hope this was helpful in you sketching soft goods and costumes.